Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Joy of Addiction podcast with me, Sebastian Wocker, the author of The Joy of Addiction, Confessions of a Teenage Wastrel, which is available on all platforms and bookshops, and now as an audiobook, which I work very hard on, so please do go and listen to it. I'm going to read a small portion of Chapter 1, Mrs. Thatcher and the Policeman's Helmet. 1984. I decided to pay Margaret Thatcher a little visit. I was 19 and in the midst of yet another torrid post-LSD cannabis sulfate psychosis. Nonetheless, my plan was simple: march on Downing Street, overthrow Her Majesty's government, and kick Mrs. Thatcher out of office. Naturally, before setting off on such a critical mission, a pale, gangly streak of piss like myself would need to be properly equipped. So I wrapped myself up in an old bedsheet upon which I'd written various anarchic anti-government slogans and placed a half-full bottle of Stolichnaya in my dad's old Samsonite briefcase. The fact it was proper Soviet vodka would, I thought, add gravitas and show the Iron Lady I meant business. Alone, rolling joints at 4 a.m. in the woody old kitchen of Wellington Walk, I'd often fantasised about this glorious day, the day I'd sit opposite my arch-enemy and plonk a bottle of Stolly on her desk. Knowing the game was up, the defeated PM would look me sternly, yet submissively in the eye, then, obediently, and without fuss, fetch 2 shot glasses from her fabulously well-stocked drinks cabinet. After a well-deserved dressing down, we'd drink to her imminent demise, and as my generals, Steady Eddie, Mike the Dog, and Disco Dave looked on approvingly, the all-conquering Thatcher would hand me her letter of resignation, the keys to number 10, and the code to Britain's nuclear defence system. Finally, still in her pyjamas, she'd leave the oak-panelled room, her head hung in shame. But I digress. Where was I? Ah, yes, of course, the proper equipment required by a psychotic, drug-crazed teenager for such a vital mission. So let's discuss this little chapter. Yes, I'd obviously lost the plot. I was 19. I'd already been taking drugs for a long time. And as the book will reveal, I kind of started age 14, 15, round the back of the science block. It all started with the old gateway drug, the joint, which these days is less of a gateway, actually. It can actually be a problem within itself. In fact, it certainly is. This new hydroponically edited stuff is very, very strong. And I would say there's an argument for it being a Class A, some of the cannabis these days. That said, it doesn't matter what the drug is, how much or how little you take. It's you. Are you an addict? I know I am. Some people are, some people aren't. Some people become addicts, even though they weren't. Some people can have a bit of a rough patch, get out of it, and be completely all right. There are so many different ways of peeling this orange, but I know I've proven it to myself over and over again that I am an addict. And I'm not someone who likes to label myself as something or belong to a tribe of any sort. But I will say this, that somehow, because addiction is a condition or a disease that tells you you don't have it, the rules are different for addiction. It's not something that it is a slippery so-and-so. It's like mercury. You can't sort of grasp it or hold on to it. And the only way I've found to actually really arrest my problem is total abstinence and also some kind of maintenance program, some kind of reminder that I'm an addict, because the nature of this beast is it will, if it can, get you to forget you're an addict. I went through that before, and there will be a sequel to The Joy of Addiction called The Joy of Relapse, which I'm writing at the moment, because guess what? I forgot I was an addict. I stopped going to the meetings. I stopped doing the things I was doing in order to maintain my sobriety and my recovery. And it's my experience that if I do that, I will end up using again. Innocent glass of wine. It could be anything, right? And for me, there's no such thing. Ultimately, if I use any form of mood-altering chemical, the odds are it may happen straight away or it may happen very slowly, but relapse will happen and I will end up in a place, again, that I don't want to be. Frightened, alone, shivering under a blanket somewhere, going, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. So, and that's where I was, pretty much. I was on the way to that when Mrs. Thatcher and the policeman's helmet was happening. So I went down to Downing Street and was convinced I was going to start the revolution. I really believed it. I thought I was going to pick up all my mates on the way, then the People's Popular Front of Belsize Park, which I actually made up in the book. Obviously, it doesn't exist. But the idea was that hordes of people would come out of their front doors when they saw me walk down Haverstock Hill with a sheet over my head and a policeman's helmet and a Samsonite briefcase with a bottle of vodka in it, and form a revolutionary swell that would arrive at Downing Street at 3 a.m. and oust Mrs. Thatcher. So I actually thought that was going to happen. Yes, I was insane. I'd done so many drugs at that point. The LSD didn't help, obviously. But the cannabis was the thing that kept it going somehow. Even though it seems so benevolent and like peace and love, cannabis it's a subtle little bastard, because suddenly your life went by and all you did was sit there smoking all day. It's one of those that has a really good reputation, and countries like Germany are now making it legal, and which, I question whether that's a good idea. I don't know. There are lots of reasons why it might not be a good idea. It's debatable. But anyway, I digress, as usual. To cut a long story short, I end up in a police station getting cross-questioned by a police inspector and 2 burly constables with very nasty fag and cheese and onion breath breathing at me in order to find out where I got the policeman's helmet. That's the thing they were after. They didn't care that I was a complete loon who wanted to talk to Mrs. Thatcher at 3 a.m. They wanted to know where that policeman's helmet came from, because there was probably a policeman under it at some stage. Yes, so, yeah, but did that occur to me when I approached 2 policemen outside Downing Street? No, it didn't, because I was basically a complete 19-year-old lost teenager, sociopath, psychotic loony at that point. And the good news is there is a way out. If you find yourself or know someone who's in that situation and suffering severe mental stress and drug addiction, there is, not always, but quite often, a way out of it. And I did manage to find that by the end of the book, thankfully. So please tune in to episode 3, which will be chapter 2, called Meat Wagon, in the next edition of this podcast, which will be same time, same place next week. Thanks for listening.
Oh, the horrors of addiction, they can lead to dereliction, but it need be an affliction when you find the joy of addiction.